My wife said, "My ex is coming with us on our honeymoon. If you don't agree, stay home." I replied, "Fine." Then I immediately cancelled the plane tickets and transferred all the money from our joint account into my personal account. Humiliated at the airport, she called me frantically. But I was busy enjoying the beach with a beautiful co-worker. "You have two choices," Chloe said, her voice sharp and icy. "Either Mark comes with us on our honeymoon or he goes with me. You can stay home if you don't agree." She hesitated briefly. "I just thought Mark might like to come as a friend. I didn't think it would cause any problems," she added quickly. I froze for a moment, then smiled calmly. "Fine." My mind raced, weighing options. Arguing would accomplish nothing. I needed a plan that ensured neither of us lost more than necessary. She thought she'd won, but I was only thinking, calculating, planning, as I always do. I paid for most of our wedding, the honeymoon, everything meticulously arranged, because I wanted perfection, because I could, because it mattered to me. Chloe, on the other hand, she's fire. Unpredictable, impulsive, creative, convinced the world revolves around her. And then there's Mark, her college ex. "Just a friend," she says, "but he's more like a shadow. Always calling at the wrong times, always appearing when least expected, always finding a way back into her life." And now, on the eve of our dream honeymoon, Bora Bora, turquoise waters, white sands, every detail booked and paid for, Chloe decides he deserves to come along. She calls it a kind gesture. I call it a problem. I watched her, the corner of my mouth twitching. She didn't see the wheels turning in my head. This wasn't a fight I could win with words, not this time. I thought about how she always believed she could manipulate situations, how she saw the world as a stage and herself as the star. She thought I was predictable, that I'd react the way most people would, angry, frustrated, reactive. But she underestimated me. Mark has always been a ghost hovering at the edges of our lives, never fully gone, never fully present, and now she wanted to give him a front-row seat to what was supposed to be our celebration, our escape. I could feel the tension building in the room, but my mind was already elsewhere, calculating, planning. Because as much as Chloe loved to act on impulse, I've learned that patience and planning can be far more powerful. And right now, I had all the time in the world to think. I let her think she'd won. I let her think my fine was surrender. But deep down, I knew the game had just begun. Tomorrow, when she leaves for the airport with him, I'll be ready. I didn't react the way Chloe expected. She probably thought I'd start yelling, accusing, begging, anything that confirmed I was the predictable, overly rational husband she assumed I was. But instead, I felt something inside me go completely still, like a pond with no wind. Her ultimatum wasn't just disrespect. It wasn't even just hurtful. It was a clear announcement, spoken with that sharp confidence she always wore, of exactly how little our marriage meant to her. It was the final drop, the line crossed. She mistook my silence for anger, maybe even shock. But I was neither. What I felt was clarity. Cold, clean clarity. My brain flipped instantly into analysis mode, numbers, scenarios, consequences moving like gears. I realized there was no argument I could win. People like Chloe don't lose arguments. Not because they're right, but because they refuse to imagine a world where they aren't. So I stopped imagining a world where I was still playing her game. My fine wasn't a surrender. It was the opening move in something far larger, a plan that had been simmering quietly in the back of my mind for months, waiting for the moment she proved, fully, undeniably, that she never saw me as a partner, just a resource, a convenience, a stable foundation to stand on while she reached for more exciting things. That moment had arrived. Step 1, pretend to agree. Set the stage. I let out a tired sigh the night she told me about Mark. Ran a hand through my hair, forced a conflicted expression. "All right," I said softly. "If that's what you want, fine, but this is our honeymoon, Chloe. I don't want it ruined. I'll come, but I can't promise I'll be thrilled about it." She softened immediately, exactly as I expected. When Chloe believes she's won, she becomes gentle, affectionate. She touched my arm and kissed my cheek, whispering that I was being mature. The next morning, I executed the second part of the performance. Standing in the kitchen, keys in hand, I looked at her with a weary smile. "Something urgent came up at work," I said. "I need to stop by the office first. You and Mark head to the airport. I'll meet you both there. Just keep your phone on." She didn't question it. Why would she? She thought the battle was over. Victory tasted too sweet for her to suspect a trap. Before she walked out the door, I added one last nudge. Make sure you double-check your documents, okay? She nodded, kissed me again, and left. She texted me a heart emoji 20 minutes later. She genuinely believed I had accepted everything. Step 2, silent destruction. But I didn't cancel their flight. Oh no, I wanted them at the airport. I wanted them to walk confidently through those sliding doors, believing they were about to board a luxury honeymoon I paid for. I wanted them to see the airline agents' confused faces, the problem they couldn't solve, the quiet humiliation that comes not from disaster, but from slow realization. So I left the flight intact. What I did cancel was everything waiting on the other side. The overwater villa in Bora Bora, gone. The private lagoon tour, cancelled. The romantic dinner reservation Chloe had bragged about to her friends, deleted. Every refund routed neatly back into my personal account, the one she had never bothered to learn the password for. Then came the financial shift. Our shared account, well, shared in theory, still held a sizable buffer I had contributed nearly all of. I moved the entire sum into my private account, legally, cleanly, without hesitation. The final check. No pending charges under my name, no loose ends. Their flight would depart on time, but they would land with nothing. No room, no tours, no access to the funds she assumed we'd use. And best of all, no way to reach me. Step 3, my real trip. The moment Chloe's car turned the corner, I grabbed my suitcase from the hall closet, a suitcase I had packed 2 days earlier. I had booked this separate trip weeks earlier, anticipating Chloe's impulsive nature. Now I could follow through without any last-minute issues, because somewhere inside me, I knew it would come to this. I had planned a separate trip in advance, just in case. When Chloe made her demand, I quietly executed my plan, flying to a secluded resort I had booked weeks earlier, a place I had booked the moment she said the words, "Mark needs a break." I didn't need to think twice. As the plane lifted off the ground, I felt something I hadn't felt in months, maybe years. Relief, freedom, peace. I leaned back in my seat, closed my eyes, and smiled. By the time Chloe realized what had happened, I would be thousands of miles away, unreachable. And for the first time in our entire relationship, she would face the consequences of her choices without me standing there to buffer the impact. The game wasn't over, not even close. It had only just begun. Chloe and Mark were practically skipping through the airport, laughing and joking as if the world belonged to them. I could picture it perfectly, her bouncing on her heels, the excitement practically radiating off her, and Mark trying to look casual while dragging his suitcase behind him. Their honeymoon had begun in their minds long before the plane even took off. She texted while checking in, "All checked in, are you on your way?" I sent a vague reply, "Running late, meet you there." She didn't suspect I wasn't on the same flight. I could imagine her reading it, her pulse quickening with excitement and relief. She trusted me completely, and that trust was the perfect ingredient for what was about to come. 30 minutes before the gate closed, Chloe started to fidget, the first signs of anxiety. She called me once, twice, no answer. She called again, only to be sent straight to voicemail. She muttered to herself, trying to calm down. He's probably just parking the car, or in the restroom. But the panic was already creeping in. Mark's brow furrowed, his patience thinning. He didn't like uncertainty. Chloe's excitement was starting to crack, replaced by a quiet, gnawing fear. 10 minutes before departure, she was practically pacing, bouncing from foot to foot. Calls, texts, frantic glances at the gate. Her confidence was evaporating like mist. Mark's frustration began to surface, clipped words and terse gestures. I could see them both on the edge, the joy of their victory replaced with unease. 5 minutes. The airline staff began the final boarding announcements. Chloe's heart must have dropped through the floor by now. She grabbed her phone one last time, calling me desperately. I picked up, calm, deliberate, and just a touch of amusement in my voice. "Oh, car broke down. You probably won't make it. Go ahead without me. Enjoy your honeymoon." Click. I could almost see her standing there, phone still in hand, mouth falling open, frozen in disbelief. The realization hit first like a slow wave, then like a punch. Her perfectly orchestrated plan, the little victory she had celebrated all week, crumbled around her feet. The gate closed. Chloe and Mark were left standing, stunned and powerless in the crowd. The airline agent frowned at their booking. "I'm sorry, sir, but the villa and excursions are no longer available," she said, confused. Chloe's face fell. Mark's jaw tightened. Every smug thought Chloe had about being generous, about being in control, evaporated in a second. Panic turned to action. She fumbled with the shared credit card, trying desperately to book another flight, to salvage the situation. Declined. Declined again. Her eyes widened as she checked the app. Our joint account drained. Completely. Gone. Her hands trembled as she dialed again, hoping against hope that I would answer. This time the line went dead. And then the truth hit her like a tidal wave. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't bad timing. It wasn't even a prank. It was deliberate, meticulously planned. She had been outmaneuvered, outplayed, left standing in the middle of the terminal, humiliated, alone with her own impulsiveness staring her down. Mark's jaw tightened, his face registering the betrayal he hadn't seen coming. Chloe's eyes filled with shock, anger, disbelief, and fear all at once. I could almost hear her heart racing, the adrenaline pumping as she realized she had been completely blind to what was coming. And at that moment, the full magnitude of my plan became clear. The plane, the resort, the funds, every luxury she had taken for granted. Everything gone. She was stranded, powerless, humiliated in front of strangers, forced to confront a truth she had ignored for far too long. Chloe had thought she was orchestrating a small rebellion, a tiny test of control. In reality, she had stepped into a trap of her own making, and I was long gone, thousands of miles away, leaving only the consequences in my wake. I sank into the sand with a cocktail, watching the calm ocean, indifferent to the chaos behind me. I felt relief, knowing I had separated our finances and had a plan already in place. Chloe would face the consequences of her own decisions, without me needing to intervene. My phone buzzed relentlessly on the table beside me. Dozens of missed calls and frantic messages from Chloe. I smiled, ignored them, sipped my drink. Sarah, a colleague and friend who just happened to be vacationing at the same resort, leaned back in her chair and shook her head when I recounted the story. "She deserved it," she said with a small laugh. Honestly, she did. And she was right. I felt lighter than I had in years. This wasn't about revenge, it wasn't about spite or anger. It was about release, about reclaiming control over my life. For so long, Chloe's impulsiveness, her constant testing, had been a weight on my shoulders, and now it was gone, swept away with the tide. Back home, the scene was almost the opposite, silent, tense, and suffocating. Chloe and Mark had returned, the excitement of their honeymoon reduced to shame and anger. Chloe's eyes avoided Mark's. Her chest rose and fell rapidly as she tried to process the events, the humiliation, the stark reality. She had to face it. The man she had married wasn't just absent at a critical moment. He was precise, deliberate, and ruthless in his planning. Every detail, every step of the honeymoon had been orchestrated by me. She realized finally that the entire ordeal was a performance, and she had been the unwitting audience. A week later, I returned home. The phone calls and messages hadn't stopped, but they no longer mattered. Chloe herself arrived, thinner, frantic, her face drawn and pale. She stormed into the room, pointing a trembling finger at me. "How could you do this? You left me at the airport. You're a coward. You humiliated me." I looked at her calmly, even gently. "You made the mistake when you invited him. I just let you see the consequences. You said I could stay home if I didn't agree. I chose to stay home, in my own way." I handed her an envelope. Inside, divorce papers and a check. Everything that belonged to her, clean and final. "This is yours. We have nothing else to discuss," I said. Her knees buckled. She collapsed to the floor, tears streaming down her face. For the first time, she truly understood. The game was over. She had lost. I walked over to the window, watching the late afternoon light glitter across the city. For the first time in years, I felt unburdened, free from manipulation, free from drama, free to move forward without fear or hesitation. A chapter had ended. Another awaited. The door clicked behind me as I stepped back. Chloe's cries echoed faintly. the sound of defeat, of realization, of someone finally forced to confront the consequences of their actions. I turned toward the window again, the sun setting low on the horizon. I didn't feel joy at her pain. I felt relief, liberation, the freedom to breathe, to think, to plan my own life without interference, without chaos. And in that quiet moment I knew, nothing in my past, nothing in her choices could touch me anymore. I was free, truly free.